a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. You know, one way I find guests is on Facebook, because Facebook does this thing, people I might know. So I look, first thing I do is look at their profile, and depending what they have there, I think, ooh, now I wonder if that person would be interested in being on the show. So that's how it came about that I invited today's guest. Time to meet Marilyn Norry. Hello.
Hi. Hi, Nancy.
So on your Facebook page, it says mymotherstory.org. So I'm curious to know what that's all about.
Oh, well, I am an actor. I was wondering what would be most curious on my Facebook post, because I haven't, my profile there, I haven't read it in such a long time since I set it up. I don't know what it was. But mymotherstory.org, that is a website that we have for a nonprofit society called Mothership Story Society. And that's a project that I started in 2004. And it wasn't going to be what it is now. It was, at that time, I was just bored and frustrated with the roles that I was auditioning for, what I was seeing on the screen or the stage. I also work as a dramaturg, a story editor, so I was reading a lot of scripts. And it was just like the women characters, the female characters, like, oh, come on, there's got to be more than this. Yeah. So I was I'll tell you the wedding story. I was at a wedding, and we were waiting for the reception to start, and a friend was telling me a story, and she said, well, to know what I mean, you have to know my mother's story. And she said, she was born here this year, this was her parents were like, then they moved here, then they did this. It was a fascinating story. And she went through the whole thing in about, I don't know, 10 minutes, but it was like World War II and all of these mistaken identities. And I heard it as a story arc, which is a device we use in dramatic writing, where it's kind of a point form of looking at the journey, the physical and emotional journey of a character through a script. And so you go, oh, well, they start here, and then this happens, that happens, they say this happens, and you do it in dramatic writing to make sure that the journey is clear to an audience and to the actor who's going to be playing that part. So I thought, I wonder if I could do that with my mother. And I'd rarely told even stories about my mom. My dad, I impersonate him all the time, my mom, no. So I thought, okay, well, she was born here, this happened, then that happened. And I was thinking, what's the next plot point in the story of her life? And I thought, well, okay, there's this and there's that. What would be important? Got to the end and I thought, well, it's not nearly so interesting as my friend's story. But my friend said, oh my God, I've never heard anything like that. And I thought, I think we don't value the familiar. Mm-hmm. So, it kind of stuck with me. And the next day or so, I sent out emails to my friends. I thought I'll make it a sociology project and just do women actors living in Vancouver. And I say, what's the story of your mother's life? Just the facts. Mm-hmm. And I thought everybody was going to have a story that was kind of like mine, but because we're, in the same place and doing the same thing. No. The first story came back was the mother grew up in Hungary and was dancing with the Bolshoi ballet. And there was, amnesia and World War II, and then running away as refugees. I mean, it was just, and the next, one of my teachers, well, my father was a baron and a medical missionary in Tasmania. And it was like, goodness, we don't know the story of somebody else's mother. We don't know the stories of the people that we work with. And we think we know. We're all so busy about trying to fit in and not call attention to ourselves. These stories are getting buried. So it has grown from there.
Right. So, okay, I'm growing. So how do you like how did it get about so to grow from there? Like you talked to the people that you know, like the woman at that wedding, and thought about your own mother's story, and then how did you reach out to other people to get their stories about their mothers?
I sent it on by email to my friends, and
Okay.
that got passed on to about probably 300 people. I said when I sent out this request that we're going to, put it in a book.
Right.
But we read these stories and they are the best theater ever. When we read them to each other, it was like everybody would cry.
Oh.
And everybody would just or someone would say, well, my mother didn't have much of a story. And we go, oh my goodness, she doesn't know what she's got.
Yeah.
And it was true. I thought when I started this, that this would be easy. It would be just like a walk across the room, but the room got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh.
So there is now a nonprofit society, an archive online with 150 or something stories. I've been doing workshops. There have been productions. We did a play, our first play in 2006.
Right.
We just did I was just working on the 14th show. They're all each completely different. With Delta Stageworks in Delta, BC.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 3 anthologies, and I've written a workbook. And it was really just, what's the next thing? And people find it and say, okay, I want to be in there, or tell me what to do, or challenge. We've got all of these books have come from challenges. People come to me and say, wouldn't it be great if we got the stories of this group of people? The last anthology that we did was from people around the world, men and women, who had lost their mothers when they were children. And that was and they also wrote, because it was a therapist, one of our group, who initiated this, and she took them through the process of grief, of dealing with grief. And they wrote essays about what happened to them over the process, where they had grown up as motherless children,
Right.
and wrote their mother into existence. They said it was like a paradigm shift.
Oh, wow.
For them to do that. So I'm just curious to know what I can do next.
Right, for sure. Yeah. Like you shared this well, I can't show it won't show nice on the camera, but hold on, I'm trying to get it to open up for me so I can read to people so they can go and see some of it, right? So it's really interesting to tell her story and discover your own. That's where I saw when I read where you had how it came about for you at that wedding, right?
Yes.
That's how it started. And I just find it so fascinating, when you said, like people think their mother's story isn't interesting, that's the way I feel about interviews. Like people say, oh, I'm not interesting. And I'm thinking, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I think that this thing that we get into, grade 4 or something, when we try to fit in, we stop looking at ourselves. And it is a hard thing, when there's corporations or whoever is saying, tell your story. And everybody just seems to be saying that now. Well, really what that means is that you have to own the stuff that got you beat up in public school and make it into a good thing.
Ah, okay.
And there's the therapeutic thing that's involved in that. Right. It's very good, but it's hard. And one of the things that we have with the mother's story, which I just happened upon accident, and, I've tested it and I'm not going to change it now, but it is that you have to write the whole story in 2,000 words, which forces you to think about what's important.
Right.
I was just reading, it was another blog post or something, and it was Drew Barrymore was talking in that one too, but her guest was talking about how we protect our mothers, even if they're awful. And that's true. There's a whole, these are great stories that are sitting right here. I mean, this is what I find so amazing, but it's a real nut to crack for people. And I think it's absolutely necessary thing to do now as women are coming into the public field, for the first time ever, and wanting to, ordinary women, not just, exceptions to the rule.
Right.
are coming in and owning their space. Will you own your space? You're going to talk about your mom.
Right.
And you don't have to be, it's not mommy dearest. It's not where you slag her or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just talk. And then you talk about the stories that made an influence on you when you were growing up, because the rules that you have grown up believing, and sometimes you don't even question or look at, are entirely different than the person who's sitting at the desk beside you, or the person that's over here or over there.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting when you said that we protect our mothers. Like I know in my family, some of us would make excuses for her behavior,
Yeah.
right? And which is kind of interesting when you think about it. Instead of saying, yeah, she did this and let it go, well, she did it because, and well, maybe there was a reason. Obviously, people have a reason for what they do, but and I think especially so if the other parent is not good.
Well, yeah, you do play all of those the family games. The family dynamics are quite incredible. And I think, nobody wants to bring pity onto their family. They don't want to cause that kind of negative attention. But I think that, like, what is going on now with the whole mental health challenge, there's an extraordinary number of women in the stories that I've read who had mental breakdowns in their 40s.
Wow. Is that right?
And that never gets talked about. I mean, we talk about men having their, whatever there is, and they buy the sports car thing.
Right.
What women have done is that they realize that they can no longer look after everybody and be the emotional resource for everybody and get nothing back, which is kind of the rules that we were raised with, those unconscious rules. If we're talking about mental health, the stories that I've read, and I've worked with, well over 200 people, because not everybody wants to put their story in an archive. I mean, I tell people, don't even tell anyone that you wrote it at all. Right. Just write it for yourself to know what it is, that put the facts together, see your mother as a human being instead of this icon, whether good or bad, but this icon who needs to be protected. Right. There's John Bradshaw, who wrote Healing the Shame Within Us. He said, parents teach their children what not to see. Right. And really, as an adult, if you start going, okay, let's look at it. Let's write it down on a page, get it out of the head, get it out of the heart, put it down on the page. Don't do anything with it. Just, that's enough. Yeah. That's enough.
Yeah.
A good story. If you put it into a good story, like storytellers, people think storytellers are born. No, you could, but it's courage. Let me put this into a good story, and it just heals all that stuff about, that personal stuff that you don't want to deal with.
Right. Yeah. Wow. There's something that when you mentioned that as an actress about roles for women and the way women are treated in society in general. And, we're supposed to, like, if you look at ads, we're supposed to look like we're supposed to be this thin and be all, those things. And it's the same with the roles for actor women as they get older, especially compared to men, and I find that all so fascinating. It's not a good thing, and it's time that we need to change it, of course, right? Which is not easy.
No, but you know what? It is changing. Because those are the rules that you and I grew up with, and it's certainly the part of the dialogue that's happening there. But my mandate to get better roles for women written and on the screen has changed profoundly since 2016. Profoundly since the Me Too movement happened, and that was just somebody sending out an email. Oh. That was just somebody like that, and it just took off, and it went like that. But it's like, if you watch, I'm watching TV now. It bugs my husband a lot because I'll say, "Oh, look at there's a woman director. Oh, look, there's a woman's name above the title. Oh, like that." Well, now you just can't even talk about that. Yeah. There were movies before, without question, were all men, one woman. 2 women, the Bechdel test. Have you ever heard of the Bechdel test?
No.
Oh, I get to share it with you and your people. Okay. Alison Bechdel is she was doing comics, and she's done some what was it? Big Home is a book, a graphic novel. It's one of the best graphic novels I've ever seen. But in, I think it was like 1989 or early 90s or something, she wrote this comic strip, and she had it in, it was Dykes. Oh dear, I should have written it up. Okay, Alison Bechdel. Anyway, it was a test, and it was a conversation between two women, and one woman said, I don't go and see movies unless there's more than one female character, that two women talk to each other, and that they talk about something other than a man. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very simple test. Mm-hmm. And yet, I mean, at that time, and certainly until 2016, less than half of the movies that we would see here would pass that test.
Right.
And so it was just one of those unconscious things. It was like that bias thing that nobody had paid attention to. Well, now it's like, I am just so fascinated watching two women talk about things in a movie, because like the movie makers are very hip to this stuff now. Somebody put the statistics. This is Gina Davis's, has got her website on women in media, and has been able to fund, or they have been able to fund all these studies on statistics on how many women are actually showing up on screen, how many, and that Bechdel test, somebody said movies that follow the Bechdel test make more money at the box office.
Okay.
And then everybody went, oh, okay, let's just put their money into that now. And I think that that's a big thing that has resulted in this whole renaissance. Now, we've got women as superheroes now, mm-hmm. which is interesting, certainly. But superheroes are not, everyday women, but at least, it gives us that outlet. Like the first time I saw Wonder Woman, and that little 5-year-old practicing her kung fu moves, I thought, that's me. That's me. And never having the legitimate outlet for that. One of the things, though, I see in everyday life, and I'm not sure how many people even realize this, I just put it in, I put the thing into my newsletter. The American money now, the two treasurers of the treasurer of the United States and the treasurer of the in charge of money are both women.
Right.
The dollar bills have two women's signatures.
Right.
To say that this is proper currency.
Yeah. Right. Legal tender. Yeah.
That's real. Right. That's a real indication of where we are now.
Well, it's interesting because at the same time, at least some things in the States, they're trying to go backwards.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Right.
I think it's pushback, but I think that this is not like the same thing that happened in the 70s.
Right.
Right, in the 70s, and we were there, and it just seemed like everything was like the blooming of everything, and it was Roe v. Wade, and it got to a point. And then the Americans wouldn't pass the Equal Rights Amendment. Mm. It goes up to a point, and then it's like, oh, the pendulum is going back again. Yeah. I don't think we're going to go back as far as that.
I hope not.
And in those individual states that have taken the legality of abortion away, those things are getting overturned all over the place. But when we just watch the news headlines, it's really activated a lot of people who were sitting on the fence about a lot of things, who say, okay, no, we're not going that far back.
Yeah, because it would end up being like places like where the Taliban, the
Taliban is in charge. Yeah, absolutely. It's like that's an authoritarian state, and there's a lot of people who feel like they would feel safer if there was just one guy in charge of everything.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, the same that, and that's kind of, to me, it's okay. This is where I really get into stuff, but to me, it's kind of like, it's the war between the law, the rule of law and the tribal. And this is huge. It's huge, huge, huge. This is really, are we going to stand by this idea that we are all created equal?
Hmm.
Are we going to stand by the rule that laws pertain to everyone,
Right.
not, and that the king is to follow? I mean, like, we've had it since 1066. I mean, well, okay, not quite, but you know, the Magna Carta and that kind of things in Western culture. But in those tribal cultures, they're still going on to the thing. No, the guy's in charge and we want one job, one czar. We want one person in charge. And those people will fight this because that's what they grew up with. That's where they feel safe.
Right.
But the thing is, North American women are spreading out this thing. There's a dollar with 2 women's signatures on it, you know, and the world didn't fall apart.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Right? Yeah.
First time I got on a bus and there was a woman driving it, I was cautious. I was watching her. I mean, like, and now I don't notice anymore.
Mm-hmm. You're right about that. You know, it's like when Penny Marshall was, you hear about her being a director, right?
Yeah.
You know, it was a big thing because,
Yeah.
oh, wow, you know, a female, yeah, and she's a good director.
Yeah.
Too.
And now, if I don't know if you do this or any of your people do that, but looking at the credits, I don't even know any of these directors.
Yes, no.
I mean, and it's not just women; it's everybody. Like, the doors are open.
Yes.
It's on merit. It's on merit.
It shouldn't be about just males or just females, right? I agree.
And we've been paying lip service to that for so many years, and now it's like, no, it's just on merit. Yes. And I think in that thing of rule of law and tribal, that's the thing.
Right.
The tribal says that there's all of these things that you're not allowed to do, and only those people can do it, and only these people can do that. I mean, you look at India, the caste system, the internet's blown that up. Yes. I mean, the untouchables are now in charge of the internet.
Yes.
We can't say that those are you have to deal with them. You know, there's people breaking the rules all over. Now that causes a lot of uncertainty, for sure. And that's one of the reasons, I'm just going to pull this back to my mother's story thing. That's one of the reasons why this is so important, I think, is to write down what was, because it is changing so fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah.
You know, I had my aunt, who was my godmother. She was like way ahead of her time. We came from a very small town, like 10,000 population. Like, she was divorced. She would have been born in the 30s, right? She had her tubes tied, like things on, and then she ended up being a steward on a freighter, you know. And it's like, she was unique. Yeah. But she didn't stay in that town because it would never have worked in a small little town like it was, where everybody knows your business, you know. I just find that all so fascinating that every once in a while through history, in the past, not now, you would see one person who stood out. Yeah. A female who stood out. And
when you look at the rules of what women had to deal with, we really were, I mean, the cultural rules were men were outside, women were inside, and women ruled the house. Yeah. You know, in Chinese culture, one of the symbols for discord or unhappiness is a symbol of a house with 2 women in it. You know, there can only be one woman in charge of the house, and she was in charge of it. And that took all of her time. That was a big job. It was a worthy job. Yeah. We now live in just these little boxes. All of the services are provided. All of the technology is taking. That's not a job anymore. I mean, it is. It truly, truly is. Now, I'm looking at that thing about being the glue that holds people together, which never gets talked about. And that's still a big job and really, really necessary as we're dealing with community, as we're dealing with, you know, all kinds of things like that. But for what job we have, it no longer applies.
No longer applies, yeah. Well, we're going to run out of time soon. I just want to tell the audience that they can find My Mother's Story. It's got mymothersstory.org, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where they'll find the link. That is the link.
Yeah.
Where they can see what
That's go right there. That's it.
That's it. Just stay on camera now. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for watching.
Okay.
You've been listening to Marilyn Norry, and I think I'm going to have Marilyn on again because there's so much more to learn and to share, right? So want to thank you all for watching the show. I hope you continue to do so and take care of everybody. And please, peace out. Oh gosh, I didn't turn it off yet. Sorry, people.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all.